a father-son talk about you know what. My dad and I were fishing when he started in on quizzing me about the point I'd gotten to concerning, sex. Beginning by explaining why he'd picked that day for launching his rather probing questions, he began with, "Tell me, Rex, now that you've turned 17, and only you and I are sitting here a mile from shore, where Mom can't overhear, how'd you like to spill the beans on what you've done with Carol? And I don't mean as far as smoking weed or drinking beer. It's time we had this little talk, and son, I'm only asking because your mom insisted. She's concerned, and so am I. We're not so old we can't remember dying to, you know what, the one thing every teenage kid is all fired up to try." Dad's expectant stare, to say the least, was disconcerting. I knew what he was asking, but I couldn't believe my ears. Frantically, my mind began to process clever options for answers that, while slightly vague, might minimize his fears. I started out with, "Carol and I are closer now than ever, and we've been going steady since the 1st of April. But, even though we've spent a lot of private time alone, trust me, Dad, we've never given in to you know what. Besides," I added proudly, "if we do try you know whating, we know that you're supposed to use protection when it's done. So, if we simply can't resist and actually do the deed, there won't be any problems down the road to ruin the fun." "Fun?" my dad exploded, going rigid on his seat. "You're 17, and Carol is only 16. Ain't that right?" "I know we're way too young," I wisely said, "but as you mentioned, fending off the urge to you know what is quite a fight. At least we know the risks," I added, hoping that would soothe him. "And not that we are planning to, but if we ever did, at least we won't be sticking out our necks like others have, and Carol will not be dropping out of school to have a kid." "I see you got the whole thing figured out," my father snarled, "counting on protection to prevent a big mistake. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Careful, if that chance is taken, that would be the worst decision both of you could make. If she does get pregnant, which you know of course can happen, have you talked at all about the options? What to do if and when protection fails? You wouldn't be the first ones thrown into a circumstance in which there are but two ways to solve the problem. And believe me, it's a problem. And at your age, it's obvious that neither choice is great." "Yes, we have," I reassured him. "We've got friends from high school whose lives were messed up really bad because they didn't wait. The football coach's daughter got knocked up a year ago, and when their family moved away, it broke her boyfriend's heart. I swear to you that Carol and I have not yet you know whated, and it will be at least a couple years before we start." That actually calmed him down a bit, and we went back to fishing. But, knowing by his questions what he'd seemingly believed, after our discussion, it was not so easy telling which of us, my dad or I, was feeling more relieved. The Shoplifters. Just a couple months ago, while heading home from work, I stopped to grab some basics at a small-town grocery store. I'd only just begun to wander through the crowded aisles to find the few important things that I had come in for, when I would overhear a pair of whispering teenage kids as I would crouch to read the price on something near the floor. I could easily hear the shame within their frantic voices. "I can't believe we have to steal," the first would softly say. The other voice would answer, in a frank but worried tone, "We have to have these pills, Denise, and there's no other way. If Justin's fever doesn't break, I don't know what we'll do. Can't afford a doctor, and we have no means to pay." The two had no idea at all that they were not alone. They had no way of knowing that their every private word was coursing through the mind of someone poised so very near. Sharing plans to steal, of course, would not have been preferred. And I would stay there, motionless, and contemplate the point where I would go and tell the clerk about what I'd just heard. "I suppose we have to," said a trembling young Denise. "If Justin weren't so very sick, I know we'd never steal." "No, of course not," said her partner in their tiny crime. "And I know you can understand how bad it makes me feel." "Yes, I can," she answered him. "And Kevin, please believe me. In my heart I know this need for medicine is real." "Okay, now," she softly said. "Oh God, this makes me sick. Let's go before I start to cry. I've never felt so sad. If only there were some way we could pay for Justin's pills. But when I checked his fever last, well, it was really bad." When the nervous couple walked from out behind the aisle, I saw at last the anxious and the desperate Mom and Dad. When they saw me kneeling there, their faces froze with fear. The guilt within their tearful eyes betrayed their little sin. For just a moment, no one moved. But then my heart dissolved, and I stood up and said, "Hey, Kevin, how the heck you been? Hi, Denise. And how's that little Justin? By the way, I was kind of hoping that I'd see you guys again. Here's that $100 that you loaned me back in June. I'm sorry that it took so long to finally get you paid." They knew I could have turned them in, but when they saw me wink, they both would quickly comprehend the choice that I had made. Kevin squeezed Denise's hand and gave his son a kiss, then stepped behind a counter where the papers were displayed and pulled the pills he'd stolen from the pocket of his pants. And when he reappeared, Denise broke down and said to me, "You must be an angel. We're so grateful for your help. How can we repay you? We're as broke as we can be." "Just remember," I replied, "to help somebody else, if and when you get the chance. That will be my fee."